Welcome back to the Blue Corner. My name is Dennis, and this week we're going to try something a little different. I've decided to bring the sexy back, and there's only one guest that comes to mind. He's the owner, the founder, and head coach of Australian Kickboxing Academy. He's also one of the most renowned referees on the national circuit, and he also refs for the UFC, of course. When he's not doing that in his spare time, he likes to, travel the world and do a little bit of modelling. But I'm talking about none other than Jim Perdios himself. How have you been, and how have you been spending this lockdown period?
Oh, wow, what an intro. Thanks, Stigger. I've been great. What a warm winter. I'm usually away this time of year, training, learning a bunch of new techniques. But here we are with our borders closed, and I'm grateful for it. Been having fun.
And it's kind of funny because you say it's a warm winter. I'm absolutely freezing my ass off. But yeah, I see you've been spending a lot of the time swimming in waters and stuff. Like you've been going jet skiing, you've been going to some sort of secluded waterfall. I don't even know where it is.
Yeah.
Is that how you normally spend your winters?
Absolutely not. I'm usually not here for winter. Picked that hobby up during COVID. Been abseiling. Shout out to Christian and the boys. Got a kit. Got taught how to abseil. Had a few accidents along the way, a few scary ones, but it's fun. Gets the adrenaline pumping, and I've been enjoying it. So connecting with nature, I've been loving it actually.
And when you say you've had some accidents along the way, what kind of accidents are we talking about?
Flipping upside down, smashing on the rocks. I hit my glute a few weeks ago, which gave me a sore back last week actually. A few scary ones. So I've got some videos that I'm not allowed to post, but maybe one day. Okay.
And where do you go abseiling? Is it like down Wollongong Way, or is it down Blue Mountains? Or
yeah, Belmore Falls. There's quite a few. Macquarie Pass. It's all south mainly. There's a few in the Blue Mountains as well, but all around New South Wales. They're all in our backyard. And to be honest with you, I didn't have a clue.
Okay, and well, you found yourself a new hobby. So you're going to go from fighter to coach to ref to now extreme sports.
The thrill seeker,
right?
Absolutely.
So obviously, I was talking to you before the podcast about I assumed you'd have, quite a few fights along the way, and but when I did my little searches, I found nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So on purpose.
Yeah.
So where when did you start picking up, I guess, the sport of kickboxing? Because you just deal with kickboxing, right?
No, I started in MMA actually. So kickboxing MMA in 2006. Fought many times. I had 22, 24 fights. Combination of Muay Thai, kickboxing, mixed martial arts pancrations. Some of them were MMA fights without head punches. Amateurs, that's what was around in New South Wales at the time. Even had a Taekwondo fight in Melbourne because it was a free trip. But stopped fighting young. So started at the age of 17, stopped fighting at about 2021. Kept training, traveling the world, training with the best guys on the planet. Got an invite to try out for The Ultimate Fighter in 2013, which a lot of people don't know. Didn't make it. And then I decided, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to put all my concentration into coaching and into officiating. So that's September 2013, I tried out for The Ultimate Fighter. November, December 2013, I picked up being a referee, and I haven't looked back.
So with the Ultimate Fighter, like, what was that experience like? Like, is there a lot of people that try out for that? Like, obviously, you see the little bits of the tryouts during the series, but like, what from your end, what was that experience like?
Nerve-wracking. Everyone turns up. You're putting a grey rash guard, grey shorts. Looks like you're going to prison.
Even though prison is orange.
Yeah, yeah.
Grey is the new orange.
That's right. So, yeah, we get put in a room. First round is to grapple against a random opponent for 5 minutes. Then you got to hit pads and strike, and then they want to see how well you presented on camera. So that was quite a nerve-wracking process. I actually didn't have a pro record, so I didn't have a chance of entering that house. So I'm not too sure why I got the invite. But I was there, had fun. It was a great experience. Realised that wasn't the path I was going to take. And didn't look back. That's it was actually a good thing.
So the reason you got the invite, I'll just say now, is because of your profile on camera, right? I mean, going back to your modelling career, but they thought this guy could, but like who do they send for those tryouts? Is it some of the head honchos, or do they have like scouts, or how does that all work?
Yeah, it was Joe Silver at the time. He was a UFC matchmaker. A few others. I'm not too sure of their names. And then you've had a few high-profile coaches at the time to guide people through pad work and obviously the rolling stages, and narrow down the criteria for making the next round. Okay,
and so let's take it back. What originally got you into combat sports? And I only ask this, and it's because I've had the privilege to actually visit your academy, and there's a picture up on the wall.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that picture. I mean, one thing I'd like to ask about that picture is that for your members, so they can kind of see, or is it just a stark reminder for yourself as well?
I actually didn't want that picture up. It was one of our members that really pushed it, and shout out to you, Kylie, for putting that picture up on the wall. She wanted to share to everyone where I started. Obviously I've come a pretty long way.
You've come a long way. I'll be the first to say, when I walked into your academy and I saw that picture on the wall, I didn't even realize it was you, right?
No, not many people do.
And it was Tani that turned around and goes, "That's Jim," and I'm like, "No, it's not." And after a while, I'm looking. I'm like, man, it is. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it is like, so it is a massive transformation. Like, it really is. And that's why I say, like, for me, it's a good thing having it there. And as I say, I don't know if it was for yourself, as in like, as I just mentioned, to remind yourself how far you've come along, or just for your members. I mean, it's inspiring. It really is.
It's more for my members, to show people that no matter where you are in life, you can achieve whatever you put your mind to. Doesn't matter where you start from. Everyone starts from everyone starts somewhere, but that your past doesn't dictate your future. You can be a victim of your past or a master of your future, and the decisions you make and the choices you make in your life will dictate where you become, where you go. So I was. So going back to that picture, I was very overweight. I was obese my whole life. I was picked on. I was bullied in high school. And in my late teens, I made the decision that I wasn't going to live the rest of my life that way. I knew my 20s were coming up. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be fit. I wanted to take control of my whole life. Take control of my life, I should say. Not get bullied anymore. And that's when I made the decision to start martial arts, start my journey. 2006, I was 17 years old. Lost 35 kilos.
Damn.
It was a lot of weight. And then haven't looked back. Started fighting from one goal to another. Then I started coaching, and then I've made my purpose in life. My quote I always say is changing the lives of others like I changed my own. And now with my academy, many of our coaches, they've also lost weight. They've transformed their lives. So now it's changing the lives of others like we change our own. And I won't stop. It's just the beginning. I can't wait to see where the future holds, what the future holds. And the future's bright. I can't wait. So we're just gaining momentum. It's getting more and more powerful as every year goes on. It's become a real family community, and everyone pushes each other. It's a phenomenal martial arts environment. So
and when you say with the beginning of martial arts, was that more to do with the weight issue, or you just mentioned that you got bullied a lot? So was it more to do with learning a self-defense or something like that? What was your actual first initial reasoning behind wanting to take up a martial art?
It was the weight issue. I wanted to lose the weight first. Then I realized I'm enjoying this stuff, punching, kicking. I wanted to put my skills to the test. I had my first fight after 4 months, and I won. And then the rest is history after that. Just kept fighting, and obviously no one's bullied me since. So it was definitely a weight issue in the beginning. So, and it's just been an evolution and transformation process ever since. So bit by bit, step by step, new goal by new goal, you achieve one, set a new one. set
And
that bar higher and higher.
and obviously Australian Kickboxing Academy. When did that all come about? You know, and I always ask, like, what was your thought process behind naming it Australian Kickboxing Academy? In the sense of, you know, a lot of people. I mean, I had Tiago the other week, and he was talking about legacy is because he wanted to leave a legacy, and you know, things like that. So, you know, when you pluck a name out of the sky, I always like to kind of like, you know, ask what the reasoning is and why that name kind of like sticks to you.
I opened up the Australian Kickboxing Academy in 2015 at the age of 25. I became a personal trainer at the age of 20. The name then was Vitalized Fitness and Personal Training. Cool name, just didn't stick with me. I did a lot of personal development courses in my early 20s, and they really emphasize on your identity and what do you want people to know you as. And I have a goal to be one of the best striking coaches in the world. So kickboxing, that word kickboxing had to be in the name. Obviously, we're from Australia. And it's not just a gym, you know, it is an academy, it's a family. So Australian Kickboxing Academy made sense.
Okay, and so when you say you want to become the best coach in Australia or even globally, I always wonder, you know, like, do you, even though you are the head coach, like, how do you keep progressing? Like, I mean, obviously you say normally you'd be away right now. I know you travel a lot. But for a head coach, what is like your way of progression?
I travel the world twice a year. I train and study under the best coaches and gyms on the planet. Pick their brain, share knowledge, and constantly involved that way. Obviously, we live in a phenomenal age of technology, so a lot of techniques and whatnot online available as well. I do prefer face-to-face a lot more. But constantly studying, you know, striking, being a coach, it's not what I do, it's who I am, you know, so just becoming absolutely obsessed in studying technique, breaking down fundamentals and basics and strategies and getting my fighters and teaching them those techniques and strategies and helping them become the best versions of themselves.
Now, when you say we're in this world of online information, obviously we've had a pandemic.
Yes,
I would assume that your gym had to close for a certain amount of time. Did you go down the whole, you know, Zoom class route? How did you find that experience of you know, teaching your students on an online kind of platform rather than that face to face or that physical kind of?
It was fun. It was fun. It was challenging. Yeah, we did our Zoom online classes. It was fun. It was challenging. But geez, it just can't replace face-to-face training. You know, just seeing the sweat, the tears, the emotion, pushing people face-to-face. It's just different. It's just different.
And for a kickboxing academy, I have to ask, you've got that big mural on your wall of the great Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
Why not a kickboxer? Why boxer?
Because he's the greatest of all time. That's why. He lived for. He was a lot more than just a boxer. You know, he's an inspiration. So couldn't think of anyone else. First person that came to mind. That's a person you should put up on that wall, and that was Muhammad Ali.
Okay, and now that we're kind of like coming out of the lockdown, or we did for a little while, you know, was there any precautions that you had to take when you would reopen the doors? Like, because I know some people have had different methods of how they do it. You know, I mean, I've obviously had 2 Tiagos on before, and one was like, you know, we're going to go back to full contact, but I'm going to match people up on a weekly basis so they share the same partner for the full week to try to prevent. Where I know Tiago down here was kind of like, we're going to start off with non-contact drilling. So everyone's got kind of the method, and I think it's because the government really hasn't really given us that much guidance on how things should be done. They were just like, either close your doors, open your doors, you know, 10 people, 20 people, but they haven't really given us any sort of guidance. So when it was time to reopen the doors, how did you... like, what was your method to the madness, I guess?
Well, it started before we reopened our doors. We were allowed outdoor classes. So we did that. We moved them out to the park and we did circuit training So there was no contact in the beginning. Once we did reopen outdoors, it was back to normal. Obviously, things had changed. We had disinfectant stations, and everyone wipes with their gear down before and after. Our academy is, in my opinion, one of the cleanest out there anyway, but even that got cleaned more, so everything got scrubbed down and disinfected more, but and people's equipment just a lot more, and that's it, just making a note of telling people, obviously you're sick, stay home. They don't have to shake hands or do high fives after class like we usually do. That's up to them, and that's pretty much it.
And now, have you had to introduce a covert martial? Does that affect martial arts academies, or is that just more for, I guess, your fitness first and stuff? Like, have you had to implement a covert martial?
Not yet. So I hope I don't have to go down that path like those big gyms. So fingers crossed we don't have to do that. But let's see how we go. As long as we stay out of lockdown, I'm happy.
Well, that was going to be my next thing, right? So I think we're on two different beliefs right now on the kind of track that we're going. So when it comes to a potential other lockdown, A, do you think it's going to happen? And I guess B, like, are you prepared for a second lockdown?
I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest with you. Obviously, I don't want it to happen. Our numbers are pretty low. I feel sorry for all my friends and family in Melbourne, especially the ones that have gyms over there. Shout out to you guys. You're going to get out of it. You will get out of it, and you'll be stronger than ever. I hope it doesn't happen here. If it does, we'll worry about it then. So no point worrying about anything before it happens. We'll just deal with it as it comes.
Okay, see, where I totally feel like we are going to follow Melbourne, and it's just a belief I have, and the only reason is once again I just find that the government, I just find that they're really doing everything on a knee-jerk basis, right? So like it's as I say to people, like, I mean, if we need to lock down, why are we locking down next Sunday? Why not now? Because between now and next Sunday, at 200 passengers coming up from Melbourne every single day, it kind of, it just opens the doors for a disaster. And I just find like that's how Melbourne kind of started. They started off with 20 cases, then it moved up, and then, 3 weeks later, they're looking at 600 plus cases a day. And I just think that if we're not careful, what's stopping us from having these kind of outbreaks? It's, I don't know, man. I don't know. As I say, I'm on a totally different belief. I definitely 100%. I don't want to go to another lockdown. I mean, I'm over here crying that we need to reopen because my better half, obviously, is overseas, and I can't wait for the day that they open international borders, let alone national borders. So everything in my heart wants us to remain open, and even more so open even further. But it's just worrying.
Yeah, the scary thing about this is no one really knows what they're doing. No one knows what's going on. You can't blame the politicians. Goodness, can you imagine being in their shoes right now? How would you deal with it? It's never happened before. It's a tough scenario. It really is. I can't wait for the day. I can't wait till it all boils over as well. So.
But you can't blame the politicians, but I think sometimes it's weird. Like they need to sit back and really think about things, right? Because I mean, it's the whole I was having this discussion yesterday about the JobKeeper payment, right? And it's like they had this knee jerk reaction. All right, we'll give everyone this stimulus, and then it comes out later that some people are actually making more on the JobKeeper than they were. Yeah. Right before, because it was just a standard payment, so it didn't matter if you were a part-time employee, a full-time employee. So some people were losing, but then some people were actually I'm making more money sitting at home, right? And then all of a sudden that creates its own problems, or where they were you can ask for rental assistance, right? But they didn't actually put anything in place. No. And then all of a sudden, people are asking for rental assistance, and then landlords are going, well, no. Right, and then it created tension between the landlords and tenants, and the government's like, well, you guys figure it out. And it's well, hang on, hang on, you literally just made this happen, you know? And I guess the one that really fired me up was, and I wish I remember what minister it was, but like he was on the news and he was like, he said something like, if your business doesn't survive this lockdown, maybe you're in the wrong business, or something to that kind of, you know, and I thought, hang on a sec, because it was when the whole debate was, you know, do we extend the JobKeeper or not? And that's what he came out and said. And I was like, and that's the first time, like, because I don't really get into politics, but that was the first time that it really hit me. And the reason being is I was like, hey, hang on, you're living off taxpayers' money. Let's get that straight, Absolutely. Right? If you're a politician, like, we're paying your wage. So maybe you need to be in another job. This is my theory. And then the other thing is, like, yes, people needed to figure out ways to make their business sustainable. But when there's certain businesses, gyms included, where they're saying you have to lock your doors, right?
Yeah.
It's not like right now when they're like, look, you can have your doors open, but you have to abide to social distancing, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you need to make that work somehow. But during those periods where they're saying you have to lock your doors, you can't open, or you face massive fines and stuff, how can you then turn around in the same phrase and go, well, if your business doesn't survive, right?
Absolutely.
I just thought that's kind of crazy. So as much as I agree, like, the politicians, this is all new territory to them, but I think sometimes I wish they just thought about, A, what they said, and two, like, when they implement some of these things, that they think about it before they do it, and then, like, kind of like try to backpedal all of their decisions, right?
I don't think anyone had time to think about it, Stinger. It just happened so fast, you know. So they had to make some sort of a decision on, you know, how much people are getting paid, and, you know, $1,500 a month was the amount. And there you go. It just had to happen. It happened so fast, and many people were worried about me. Obviously, being closed, we were closed for 3 months, and people were asking me, you know, do you think you'll survive? And I said, there's no chance on earth that I won't. You know, but that's how committed I am to it. So I think for some people that did shut, I think perhaps they were looking for a way out, and COVID was it. For some people, yeah, it's challenging. You know, if you don't have enough savings, if you haven't saved, or if even more so, if you've just started a business, you know, if we were in year one, you know, our academy's been open for 5.5 years. If we were in year one, it'd be tough. It'd be really tough when you've taken on a lot of debt and whatnot. So yeah, for a politician to come out and say something like that is absolutely outrageous. But, you know, that's politicians for you.
As I said, that was the first time. Like, the rest of it, I'm kind of like on the sideline about. And as you say, like, I totally agree. I'm like, well, you know, they're doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
But that, and as I say, I wish I remember who he was, like the name, because he was the one guy that really got under my skin, because I was like, hey, hang on a sec, you know.
Yeah.
How about taxpayers stop paying money? You don't have a wage and you look for a new job, you know, like that was just kind of the way I felt about it. But talking about having time to think, I mean, obviously, you know, the other thing that you do, and you do really well, is the reffing side of things. Mm-hmm. And we'll get it out there straight away. You obviously reffed my fight from the blue corner.
What a fight.
It was probably one of the highlights of my life.
It was one of the highlights of mine too.
And I was about to say it was definitely a highlight of your life. And
I've had some big ones, you know.
And I definitely had some time to think, because, you know, granted, I got hit with an illegal blow, and I had a little time to think, and I came out the other end. But yeah, like with the reffing, I got to say, and only because you know, you ref for multiple organisations. First and foremost, by the time your reffing career is done, do you feel like you're going to try to at least ref for every organisation? And I mean that in the sense of, obviously you've done pretty much all the circuits on the national level. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned in the intro, you're a UFC ref.
Yes.
Once again, it's that camera thing with your face. I knew that.
That's why I got in right.
I knew straight away that they were going for that angle, because they'll always put you with some.
Have you seen my signature wink though?
Well, I was actually going to ask you about that, right? So, But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
But like, do you by the time you're done, do you think you'll also pick up a Bellator, a ONE FC, a Risen? Like, do you want to do that, or that's not?
Absolutely, I hope so. All the major organisations of the world. I want to referee the best fights in the world, consistently, and I believe it'll come true. So time will tell, but I'll get there.
And what made you originally go down that path? I mean, obviously we just spoke about you starting in mixed martial arts, and then obviously you wanting to become that coach. But what made you go, you know what, I want to become a ref?
I got into it in 2009. I actually had a fight. I lost. I wanted to take some time off. Officiating course came around. We had two Nevada officials come in late 2009, Charlie Anzalone and Chris Dognoni. They did a great course. And then that led me to officiate. I started off as a locker room inspector. That was a ex-MMA show. Kelly C.
Is that just where they sign off on the gloves? Is that it? Or
that's right. You walk the fighters out into the cage, make sure there's no cheating involved, no Vaseline being applied anywhere, and or liniment oils and things like that. So I started off as a locker room inspector. Yeah, make sure their hands are wrapped correctly. Nothing illegal going on over there. So ex-MMA came down. That was a Melbourne promotion. They did 3 shows in Sydney. I worked all 3. And then I didn't get much work until, 2014. Then I threw myself out there. I actually got in contact. It was actually at the end of 2013. I emailed every single sanctioning body in New South Wales, and I said, I don't have much refereeing experience. I had a little bit. I did a few local open mat shows, pancration shows. Some were amateur MMA with headgear. In 2011, 2012, I didn't have much experience, but I knew I could do it. I just knew I had it in me to become a really good referee, and I knew the state needed it. We didn't have many good referees at the time, so I emailed every single sanctioning body in the state, and I got hired by all of them. So in 2014, I actually worked 38 shows that year. It's almost every weekend. I remember driving to Newcastle. You drive, it's a 2-hour drive, 6 hours work, 2-hour drive back for $100. But I loved it. And I didn't stop. So that's the journey I took with officiating. And then in late 2014, the UFC came to Sydney. I wanted to referee it, but I got hired as a judge. And that was fine by me. Anything to get my foot through the door. I was wrapped, So I thought I made it at that point. I didn't get a call up again until 2017. So from 2014, I was just grinding away.
So I'm guessing it was a bad decision, right?
What's that?
Your judging debut. That's why you never got the call back for another 3 years.
Absolutely not. No fight went to the scorecards that night. It was one of
well, that's the case then. They were like, you know what? We don't even need him. We don't need judges.
That's right. So so from 2014 to 2017, I still had a dream to obviously to referee in the UFC. And I dream about it weekly. Obviously we've got what's that song, Bubba O'Reilly, the intro song. I play that when I'm working out over and over again, and I just dream and envision myself in that cage refereeing the UFC one day. And in 2017, the UFC came to Sydney again, got the call up. And yeah, that was a dream come true. Just to step in that cage with those, professional athletes at the highest level in the world was something else. So then I worked Adelaide 2018, and the world record show in 2019 in Melbourne. That was my first pay-per-view, so that was a big highlight in my career.
See, and I was gonna first when you started going on where you started your reffing career, I was going to say, yeah, you lost your fight. You probably thought it was the ref's fault, and you're like, how do I fix this? And you're like, I'm going to become a ref, right?
No, I've actually never played a referee in any of my fights.
But like on that, you say you wanted to become a good ref, and there wasn't many out there. In your eyes, what are the qualities, I guess, in your opinion, that makes a good ref?
It's this it's this sixth sense I can't even describe. It's knowing when to stop the fight, when, at that right time. Communication with the fighters is important, especially when someone's getting hurt. Submission awareness, knowing where the submission is, where to look at the arm, if they're tapping, what's getting cranked, signals to look for. There are many. Being an MMA, I referee kickboxing as well, K1, Muay Thai, and being an MMA referee is a lot harder. There's just so many things to look out for. Eye pokes, obviously groin strikes, head clashes.
We know about the groin strikes.
We sure do. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But there's just so much to look out for. Being an MMA referee is a lot tougher, and it's definitely not for everyone.
And when you say knowing the right time to stop a fight, there's been a few cases recently. A couple of weeks back, we had this whole, which is now highly publicised, this whole Dan Hardy, Herb Dean, fiasco. I don't think the question is whether it was stopped late or not. I think, watching the replays, I'll say that it probably should have been stopped. But I also granted, I say, well, in the heat of the moment, it's not like the ref has replays to go off and stuff. So it's easy to say, after the fact to go, well, I think that was a late stoppage or whatever. But obviously at the time, Herb kept it going for whatever reason. Do you agree that it was late, I guess, in a sense, after the fact? And two, what are your thoughts on the whole Dan Hardy, obviously, screaming at the top of his lungs? And I guess, look, it wouldn't have made such a difference if it was a full stadium, because you probably wouldn't have heard him. But being in the landscape that we are at the moment with no audience and stuff, it's obviously very loud. And then afterwards, obviously, they've had a back and forward where they've both jumped on their socials and tried to tell their side of the story and stuff like that. But what was your take on that whole fiasco?
I like both guys. I've worked with them both. They're both great guys. First of all, Herbie was one of the best referees on the planet.
Well, they call him the gold standard, right? So he is like what people look forward to, and if you were going to go try to be a ref, most people will point in his direction and go, that's who you should be kind of like studying, I guess.
Absolutely. And if any of my UFC fights, if I've ever looked for advice, I've gone to Herb, and he's provided phenomenal feedback. So I love the guy as a referee, as a person. He's great. And one thing people don't understand is they can't see a fighter's eyes on camera. Herb can. He's a great communicator. I'm sure he was talking to the fighter that got hit. He went around, gave him every chance to defend himself. He saw his hands being stuck in the air. I haven't replayed it too many times, to be honest with you. But from what I saw, I can't talk bad about Herb, but I think he made a great call. Dan yelling out like that, yeah, I can understand. He's a former fighter. He's a passionate guy. He yelled out. They had a few words. Obviously got publicised. But I don't think it was right of Dan to yell out like that. It should be attended to a lot more professionally. And it always is. There's always a green room talk at the end of the fight, and decisions are discussed.
I guess what it is, as you said, he's a very passionate guy, right? And I guess when he's seeing a colleague of his, because as you say, he is a former fighter, getting hurt, you can see that, we're all emotional creatures at some point in our lives, and I think, sometimes that kind of takes over, right? But yeah, it was just, look, Dana White's come out and said, if anyone does that again, like talk to the official or whatever, he would fire him on the spot. So, Dana White's even kind of, I don't think Dan's lost his job. I think that was more a warning shot now.
Yeah, sure.
From I haven't read that Dan's lost his job, but I think that was kind of like Dana White's take on it. But yeah, it's one of the hardest things, I guess. And
it's a tough job.
Look, even looking back
and it's a thankless job.
Yeah. But looking back on it, like even some of the I don't even know how to say this one now, because we're all human, right? And as I say, hindsight's a beautiful thing, and we all make mistakes sometimes. has there ever been a moment, even like in your first original fights coming up, where, you know, I'm not saying you made a bad call, but that you like look back on it sometimes and go, I could have let that go a little longer, or I should have stopped that 1 or 2 shots beforehand. Like, have you ever had those moments like within yourself?
All the time. I'm a toughest critic. I want to be the best at whatever I do. So even being a referee, I don't want to make any bad calls. So I question myself all the time. It just happens. It's a thankless job, but it's a tough one. I look at that all the time, and sometimes I look at the replay. I'm like, did a great job. What the hell what was I worried about? What was I doubting myself? But yeah, it happens often.
And with reffing, I want to ask you as well, like, you know, last week I had Jamie Malarkey on, and he was talking about this whole, you know, when you fight a champion, you've got to beat the champion to be the champion, where, as I was kind of saying to him, well, no, really, it should just be a clean slate. You're both fighting for that belt. As a ref, do you ref fights a little differently depending on the magnitude of that fight? And I say that, like, for instance, the last Dominic Cruz fight or whatever, where people are like, you know, it was 2 seconds from the bell, he was getting up, like they should have let that go because a title's on the line. Like, so my question to you is, like, you know, because I know you've also reffed amateurs, and I know that's totally different, but we'll get to that as well, because when we get to, say, my fight, I thought you did a brilliant job, and I think that a lot of the refs that I see on the amateur circuit, that fight might have been called a long time before before you called it, in a sense, right? And it would have robbed me of obviously what eventuated. But do you ever, like, so if there's like a title on the line, or say it's a UFC fight compared to, say, a national fight, do you not judge it? Do you ref it a little differently depending on the stage and the magnitude? As I say, like, you know, if it's a title fight, you'll allow a few more shots before you call the fight, or are you like, no, a fight is a fight and you judge it one way and one way only?
It comes down to communication at the end of the day. Before anyone fights, if I was to referee a fighter, I'd go backstage and I'm to tell them, if they're ever in a bad spot and the opportunity presents itself, I'll hear a call, and that call is fight back. As long as you're fighting back, as long as you're defending yourself, I'll let that fight continue. If you're just covering up, if you're showing me that you want to get out, if you're turning your back, for example, and I can see that there's been damage inflicted, I have every right to jump in there and stop that fight. And that goes for every fight, no matter what the fight is. Amateurs sometimes cannot take strikes as much as well as professionals. So you have to be a little bit more cautious as a referee when you're refereeing amateurs. But generally, that's a criteria. So as long as you're fighting back, as long as you're defending yourself, that fight's going to continue. And it doesn't matter if there's a second, 2 left on the clock. Our job is there for fighter safety. It's to protect the fighter. So if we see that you're in danger and you're hurt and you cannot continue, we'll stop that fight.
And when it comes to also point deductions, how do you, what is your take on that? Because sometimes, you know, like, you'll see an eye poke and they'll get a warning, and the second time around, whoever it is might deduct a point. Where other fights you'll see maybe 2 or 3 warnings before. Like, what's your mentality on it? Like, when deducting a point or not? Because I also find a lot of the time that, as I say, there's no clear rule. Like, I sometimes think it would be better if it was like, you get 1 warning, the next one's a point. But sometimes, as I say, like, because it is on the ref's discretion, what are you looking for when it comes to deducting points?
That's where refereeing MMA becomes a little bit more challenging. There are so many factors to be put in play. The severity of the foul. You know, how did the groin strike, for example? How hard was the strike? Was it intentional? Was it accidental? Did it just touch him with the toes? You know, did it hit him hard? Many factors go into play. Grabbing the cage. You know, I think I like to be pretty strict on grabbing the cage, and I've learnt that with experience. And it's all about communication. Like I said before, talking to the fighters, before, and tell them what you will and will not tolerate, and obviously listing the fouls and then going from there. It's a hard one. You have every situation is different, so there's no clear cut answer, unfortunately, Stinger.
As I said, it worked out for me. So, yeah, I guess let's just bring up my fight real quick. What was your kind of your thoughts throughout that fight? Because I'm the first to admit that fight wasn't going really, really well for me. It wasn't. And when I look at, like, as I say, the amateurs now, a lot of those fights get called really quickly. They really do. But you allowed it to continue on. And even though I don't, like, it wasn't like a 50-50 thing, right? Like, he came out strong and he kept going. Like, so during that fight, what was your kind of thought process? Was it crossing your mind that you were going to call that fight? Like,
it was actually your intro that made me allow that fight to continue a little bit longer than what it should have. No, just kidding. For those of you that don't know, that was a Wim to Warrior fight, and it was probably the best series I've refereed, and a lot of that comes to do with the introduction. So before you guys fought, and I remember your introduction was the only one I remember, and your face went on screen. And basically, you've got all these normal people training for 6 months, and they come in and they have a cage fight. And everyone's got a story. And your face went on camera, and I remember you saying you're always telling people to pursue their goals and dreams. But sometimes you got caught up a little bit and you never pursued yours. And then you came out, and I'll never forget that. And you came out, obviously, you walked in, you started your fight, and you were getting bashed. You were getting bashed. Not you were still in the fight. You know, you were turning your back a lot, and normal behavior when you haven't been training for too long, and you keep getting hit with strikes. And then you got hit in the groin, I believe twice.
Yep.
Gave you a bit of time, a little bit of a breather. Your opponent got worn twice. It was accidental, which is why he didn't get a point deduction. I believe. Did he get a point deduction?
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
But it didn't matter anyway.
he didn't get a point deduction. But regardless, if it happened a third time, there would have been a point deduction, regardless of it being accidental. And then you came out and you pulled an anaconda choke out of nowhere, you know, and it was one of the biggest upsets that I've refereed. And you can see it in the photo when you get your hand raised. I don't think I've ever pulled a smile. I've pulled a smile off as a referee. I'm very, very, what's the word? I can't think of the word.
You take
right
your
now.
business seriously.
I do take my business seriously. You know, I don't favour any fighter when I referee. It's an even playing ground when I'm in there. But I couldn't help myself when you got your hand raised. You know, I had a big smile on my face, and it was a cool fight. But you're even though you're getting beaten up, you're always in it. And I was communicating. I was saying fight back, and you were. So let that fight continue, and you got your hand raised in the end.
I mean, for me, to looking back on it, and beforehand, I'll just say, like, it was more a shock thing for me, right? Yep. Because, you know, being that it was our first fight, I just honestly thought, you know, we'd touch gloves and we'd do the whole little dance thing, right? And obviously he had different intentions, and he just caught me off guard because it was the last thing I expected. Because, like, we had both spoken about it. Yep, we're going to touch gloves. So I just thought, okay, we're going to do this little dance thing, right? And so when he hit me with that first shot, my head started to ring, and before I could realize where I was, obviously he had landed a couple more. But yeah, it was more a shock thing, just because that's not when they say you envision your fight, you know, and like leading up to that fight, like I ran it over my head a million times, and like if it goes to the ground, this is how it's going to happen. If it goes here, but out of the million times that I envisioned it, never had I thought he's just going to come out and punch me straight in the face. Like, I just didn't think that, and I think it just really caught me off guard. But going on to obviously being professional about the whole reffing side of things as well. Yep. Over time, especially with the amount of reffing you do on multiple circuits, you obviously form relationships with fighters. I mean, you know, you can't say you can't. I mean, when you're around them that often, you automatically do. How do you go about, you know, having these relationships over time, I guess, but then still, if you ever get assigned to one of their fights to go, listen, you're on your own, you know, it is strictly business. Yeah, how do you A, find that? Is it difficult to do, and how do you go about it?
It is. It's the MMA community is a small one. There's always going to be some sort of connection with someone. So you try to mingle as little as often, with fighters. If there's anyone you are too close with, you shouldn't referee them. It's going to be a conflict of interest, and you shouldn't be judging or refereeing that fighter.
And has there been a moment where, like, say you've been assigned, whether it be on a local or UFC card, and you've said to the promoter or to the commission, listen, switch me out, like this one's not one for me?
Yeah,
has there been that?
Absolutely. It hasn't happened too often, but it has. Yeah, absolutely. You don't feel, you just got to be honest with yourself. Do you feel comfortable refereeing that fighter? No, then don't do it.
And they obviously respect that, right? That you are being honest about that.
Absolutely.
And also, like, let's go back to your come up. You've had what I would consider the Australian version of Herb Dean in your back pocket. Shout outs to Sharpie, right? I mean, he played a bit of a mentor role for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
How was it kind of, progressing, I'm not going to say under his wing, but kind of, right? Like he did take you under his wing and show you the path. Like how is it having John Sharp in your corner?
Oh, it's great. I don't think I would have made it without him, to be honest with you. Even though he claims that I always would have. He's very humble. I honestly don't. Sharpie and I connected in 2015 on the brace circuit. And we refed every show, many shows on the local circuit together. And having him side by side really helped me. It really helped my confidence as a referee. And yeah, it's just something. That's one thing about all this pandemic that I miss the most. Haven't been able to ref side by side for a while. The last show we did together was UFC Melbourne in October, and hopefully we can do one very soon. But yeah, having someone like him side by side, it's having a mentor, and having one of the best in the games mentor you. And I'll forever cherish that. And I'll see him tonight, actually. So
nice one. Well, tell him I said hello.
I will.
Now. Yeah, so with him kind of mentoring you as well, what is some of the best advice he has given you? Like, obviously you said that he's always said, you'd make it on your own, but has there been any sort of like advice that he's like given to you over time that's just really stuck?
Just to be confident, always back your decision. I'd say that'd be the one that stands out most to mine.
Yeah. And with that, have you ever had problems, I guess, listening to, and I guess this is going back to the Dan Hardy thing. Obviously, you haven't been in that situation where it's been an empty arena, but have you ever listened to outside noise? And what I mean by that is, you go to some of these events and you start hearing the crowd boo or whatever. And look, I ask the fighters the same thing, like, does that sometimes, like, can fighters hear that? And, does that make them want to push the action more? Like, for instance, when you hear the crowd booing or whatever, like, is that kind of like affecting you in any way? Like, are you then trying to tell the fighters, like, listen, we need more action? Or do you block all of that out?
Absolutely not. You have to block all of that out. You're going to hear the crowd boo. You're going to hear the crowd tell you to stand them up, to break them off the cage. Take a point off. You're going to hear them say whatever they want, depending on who they're cheering for, really, and what they want to see. You have to block the crowd out completely and make the decision based on what's going on in that fight at that present time.
Now, another thing where I want to compare you to, I guess, fighters is, have you ever gotten nervous before an event?
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is, like, obviously you've done the small circuits and it's in front of a venue that maybe have 200, 300, 400 people. You've now refereed on a pay-per-view on the largest crowd attendance ever. You've done title fights before. You've done amateur fights before. So you've done, you've pretty much done whatever you can in the sport. Have Have you ever got like? Have you ever been like, as I say, like fighters back in the locker room, and they're like, "All right, I've got a title on the line." What like? And I assume the nerves would have probably been the Melbourne card last year.
Surprisingly, not.
No. Okay, so let's go into it. Have you ever been nervous? When have you been nervous?
Yes.
What is the reasoning behind that?
When I first started refereeing in the cage, mainly, or kickboxing in the ring, when I first began, and got thrown in the deep end a little bit. And that was fine. Recovered from that pretty quickly. Didn't feel many nerves after that for many years. And then UFC Sydney came along in 2017. It was my debut. And it was like I've never refereed a fight before. And I had refereed well over 500 fights prior to that show. Stepping in that cage, I was shivering. I was shaking. Obviously, I've fought before. It's not the same. Fighting, I believe there's more nerves involved in fighting. But yeah, UFC Sydney was just like I'd never stepped in that cage before. And after the first fight passed, it became easier. I had another 2 that night, but yeah, I was petrified. UFC Adelaide, UFC Melbourne, not so much. I'd done it before. I knew what to expect. Mental preparation came with that. Sort of seeing yourself in that arena and hearing the crowd, and once you've done that mentally quite a few times before that, when it actually happens, you're a lot more calm and not as nervous. But UFC Sydney 2017, boy, oh boy, that was something else.
And when we talk about fighters visualizing the thing, now we'll go to your little eye wink or whatever, right? So leading up to these events, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to be on TV. Obviously, you have your makeup artist in the back pocket, so I know you're good there. But like,
we actually don't get our makeup applied as referees. We should probably start maybe.
No, I'm pretty sure with your, as I say, with your modelling contracts, you bring someone along anyway.
Bring someone, yeah.
But like, you know, and everyone's got their thing, whether it's the little heart logo or whatever. Like, did you visualize that, or was it a spur of the moment thing, or like?
No, it was actually a few. I train a lot of kids, and a few of our I think his name's Adam. He still trains with us. He was I think 9 at the time, huge UFC fan, and he obviously found out that I was making my UFC reffing debut, and I said, "Look out on the camera. I'm going to give you a wink," and that's where that began. So every time I get my name called out, little wink, and off we go.
And how does it feel? And who's called out your name? Has Bruce Buffer called out you?
Yeah, twice. Adelaide and Melbourne.
Yeah,
that was cool.
And how does it feel to have your name called out like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously being a fan when I was younger, having Bruce call out your name was pretty surreal. But then, you know, as soon as he calls out your name, you got a job to do. So you got to block it out and time to get serious.
And when you talk about talking to the fighters during the fight, I mean, obviously you have your locker room talks, but during the fight, has there ever been like a response that you can like remember, whether it be quirky, whether it be funny, whether like, you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes sometimes you even see it on the telecast or whatever, and you're just, and you know, it makes me laugh, like what certain fighters do, whether it's hand gestures or whatever. And but has there ever been a moment that you can remember where you've like said something to them and they've said something back and you've like had to keep it in because, you know?
Goodness, I'm trying to think. There probably has. There's always a smart ass somewhere in the room. I've had, I have actually. Here we go. So I'll give them that little spiel of, you know, I'll tell them to fight back. And as long as they do so, I'll let that fight continue. And if not, I've got every right to step in there and stop that fight. And they've turned around and just said, just let me die. You know, just let me die. Just let me, whatever happens, just let me die in that cage. I didn't really know how to respond to that, but obviously that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I think that was one of the craziest sort of responses I've gotten.
And do you remember what fighter that was?
I don't know if I want to mention their name.
All right, fair play. So, I mean, we're going to start to wrap it up pretty shortly now anyway. Awesome. I guess what I wanted to ask you is, like, what are some of your career highlights? And this is going coaching, ref, fighter, modelling,
Not yet.
But yeah, what are some of the things that you're most proud of? Even opening the academy, whatever it may be. What are some of the as I say, the things that you are most proud of?
Losing 35 kilos was huge for me. I never thought it was possible. So doing that was huge. I fought a 4-man eliminator in Muay Thai, so fighting twice in one night. There's no shin pads, no headgear. That was tough. That was tough on the body. That was early on. Opening the academy up at the age of 25 was huge. Seeing where the academy has come to this day. It's like I said, it's not what I do, it's who I am. So that's a huge highlight for me. And as far as referee's concerned, starting from the bottom and then reffing a world record crowd in the UFC Melbourne last year was definitely a highlight. So many things to be grateful for, but also many things to look forward to. So
started from the bottom, now we're here.
That's right. And we've only just begun.
And going back to your academy too, I mean, you have some young guns in there.
Yeah.
Who are some of the people we should be looking out for?
Shout out to Ibby and Tyson. They really push each other in training. They've definitely got a bright future. But many of them do. Andrew, Khalil. Amir trains hard every day. I remember Amir's one of our young fighters that had a taekwondo background, and God, he used to come into sparring and get beaten up for a year and a half straight, and just always rock up to training. Just keep turning up. And now he's had 2 fights, 2 wins, and he's going strong. So
is that kickboxing or is he doing MMA?
Kickboxing, K1, yeah. So.
All right. And this will be the last one from me. When you go through customs, this is obviously when the borders are open and stuff, and you have to fill out your little card. When it says occupation, what do you do?
What do I write, huh?
Like, are you a ref? Are you a coach? Are you, like what or do you change it on a trip to trip basis? Like, when I say if I was to say, what is your occupation? I just want to know, like, I guess, which one takes priority in a sense.
I say business owner. So I say that. Number one, you don't want to raise any flags. I don't know, putting kickboxer or a fighter on there, even when I was younger. Didn't want to kind of do that. No, business owner for sure. The Australian Kickboxing Academy is where my heart's at. Refereeing, I'm also very passionate about. I'm very fortunate to have 2 jobs that I love to do very, very much. I'm forever grateful for them. And but yeah, definitely business owner.
No, and the reason I ask is, was it last week or the week before? No, last week was Jamie. The week before I had Tiago on, and he said he always has the problem because obviously when he fills it out, he's like BJJ professor.
Yes.
And like he says a lot of the times they're like, yeah, but what do you do? Like, because they don't really see that as a career, right? Like a lot of people from the outside are like, yeah, okay, that's your hobby. So what is it that you actually do? And that's why I asked. Like, I just wanted to know, like, if you did put ref or whatever, like if people look at you in an odd kind of way. But look, we'll wrap it up unless you've got something that you kind of want to talk about.
No, that's pretty much it, Stinger.
Yeah,
it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and look, I hope that once things go back to normal, and once you get your next fight assignment, or one of your guys are fighting out of your academy, I definitely want to have you on, in the future.
Sounds great.
But look, for people that want to get in touch with you, whether it is a promotion wanting to get in touch with you to ref on one of their cards, as I said, you're pretty much on top of it in the national circuit, but Bellator, 1FC, hey.
Here I am.
Or if people want to give kickboxing a try, like where are you situated? How can they approach you about that? Like, what are the best avenues for people to get in touch with you? Yeah,
send us a DM on Facebook or Instagram. Facebook, Australian Kickboxing Academy. Instagram, Australian.kickboxing.academy. You can go on our website, www.akaoz.com.au. And for any fight promotions that want to get in contact with me, Jim Perdios on Facebook, Jimmy Kickbox on Instagram. And I'll definitely be in touch.
And I will just have to quickly say, what about modelling? Have you got an agent?
If we go in lockdown again, I'll consider it. And you will definitely be my agent.
Well, there you have it. It looks like I'm going from podcasting to model agent. I'll take it. I'll take it. But I really do appreciate the time. I always, really respect when people take the time to travel in, and especially with these kind of conditions at the moment, everyone's like kind of scared to like move around a lot. But I do appreciate the time. I do want to have you back on in the future. But until then, we are out.
I'm a one.